that threat is growing, and if North Korea does not choose the pathway of engagement, discussion, negotiation, then they themselves will trigger an option.
Well, that's Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, of course, warning the crisis with North Korea is growing graver by the day, he says, raising the possibility of what he called an ominous option. This despite that agreement between the North and South to march together under a unified flag at the Winter Olympics next month. So, is that a real breakthrough in relations or only a symbolic gesture that plays right into the hands of Kim Jong-un? Rebecca Grant joins us. She is president of IRIS Independent Research and a national security and military analyst. Rebecca, welcome. So far, 22 North Korean athletes will go to the South, about 550 or so North Koreans in the whole party will participate in the Olympics. Do you think this is real, actual concrete progress, or just a propaganda coup for Kim?
I think it's real, and I don't see this as a propaganda coup for Kim. I like how President Moon has taken control here. It's good to have the peninsula talks, the talks between the two Koreas. They've already reactivated the military hotline as a result of those talks a few weeks ago. So I think this is Moon's chance to give an olive branch, but also to control the narrative around North Korea's participation in the Olympics.
How does he do that?
Well, I think he has it on his side at this point. And look, Moon has done what's really important. He went ahead and deployed the THAAD missile defenses, even with all the squawking from China. But he is extending this olive branch out to them. And I think by letting them participate, they have marched together before in previous Olympics. They've done some joint work together. And this allows them to go ahead, have this Olympics. And South Korea is the good cop, while the UN, the U.S., China, et cetera, maintain the military pressure. And we all hope this comes to wider talks on denuclearizing the peninsula.
Well, some would say that having unified flag, that's exactly what Kim Jong-un wants. He wants unified Koreas, but under him, not the opposite.
Right, but I think Moon is taking the real initiative here. And so just unifying this flag, marching under the unified flag, does not change the heavy UN sanctions that we see. It does not change the fact that the military options really are there, as Tillerson said. Unless there's engagement or negotiation, he will perhaps end up triggering a military option. That says there's still very heavy pressure here. And let's not forget, Moon has given President Trump quite a bit of credit for bringing about even the peninsular talks. So I think Moon is very, very savvy. Better for him to have Korea come and participate, let their figure skaters land a couple triple axels, and keep the pressure on, keep the negotiations going.
Well, while they're landing their triple axles, up north, they're still tinkering with the nuclear program. They're not stopping the ballistic missiles. In fact, they'll probably have some other test at some point after the Olympics. So, what do we take from that? Everyone's going to be watching on television and seeing them, and this will be praised, of course, as perhaps it should be. But it's not stopping what we're looking at now, those ballistic missiles that Kim Jong-un has threatened to use against us.
That's right. So don't expect the Olympics to move the needle on that big problem. The fact is, Kim made quite a bit of progress over the last 2 years, but there's still time to stop this program. There's a lot that the North Koreans have not done. They're missing some crucial types of tests. They don't have solid rocket motors. We don't know about their actual launch trajectory on a target trajectory. So the quicker we stop these tests, if he stops now, his arsenal still isn't all that great. So it's very much in the interest of the world, as the UN recognizes, to stop tests as soon as possible. We need to stop him right here.
And when you say there's still time to stop his program, how is that achieved?
I see that by particularly no more tests. What he's done is he's done some preliminary tests that have tested an intercontinental missile, but normally you'd expect to see perhaps a dozen or so more tests to really prove out that capability. So let's make sure that he doesn't prove out that capability. Let's leave some doubt about the technical expertise that they have. So I see this being achieved by continuing pressure from the UN, assistance with Russia, China, and all the world together. So let them have their Olympic moment. Let South Korea learn everything they can from that contact with a few dozen or even a few hundred North Koreans. Let them take the temperature, get the insight, and keep the pressure on for those talks.
That's fascinating. What do you think? What do you think they'll learn? Do you think any could defect?
Well, let me paint this picture for you. There are talks that go on at the DMZ. You know, the militaries are involved. And I think it's certainly possible for the two Koreas to take the temperature of one another in a way that could perhaps tell us more about what's really going on inside North Korea. Hard to speculate beyond that, but it's a chance worth taking. And I think President Moon really has this under control by letting those North Koreans come and participate on his terms in his country. And
bottom line, though, I mean, it is certainly not going to stop the nuclear program. Do you see a day where the world does have to accept that they cannot denuclearize the North unless that regime falls?
Let me quote Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Dunford on that. It is not acceptable for North Korea to have nuclear weapons. It's not acceptable for them to be able to threaten Denver or Toronto or London. So, no, I'm not ready to go to that yet. I think we have a lot more to come in this deal, and I'm expecting to see some real progress and some real talks beyond the peninsular talks. And I'd like to see this North Korean nuclear ballistic missile program and other offensive capabilities stopped cold here.
But can Beijing help give them that message? I mean, at first they didn't even want to accept Beijing's envoy on this.
Military sources continue to say that Beijing is helping, but remember, North Korea has been pretty rough on them as well. The assassination of Kim's uncle a few years ago really sent a message to China. So we need to continue to give China time to work on this. They have to make sure that all the sanctions are tightened up. We absolutely need China's help here. Our role is to continue to keep the diplomacy going, as we saw in Vancouver, and to keep the military pressure on with our forces. B-1s, B-52s, B-2 bombers all at Guam, the Navy out in the Pacific. We need to keep that military pressure there. South Korea keeps its military forces and its jets on alert, even through the Olympics. So that combination of diplomacy, both public and quiet, and military pressure is what will bring this about. It's hard. It's not easy to do what we're trying to do, but we have to keep trying to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula and not leave Kim with that offensive capability.
And finally, it is hard, and it's even harder when Russia and China aren't even a part of it. They have voted on the resolutions, yes. They've watered some down. They weren't even at the Vancouver summit, and there are reports that China still is trading, that Russia's helping with the oil. So what would you finally call on Moscow and Beijing to actually do that is concrete so that Kim could get the message?
Right. They weren't invited to Vancouver. Trump did have a phone call with Xi Jinping in that time period. But here's what I want Moscow and Beijing to do. Continue the sanctions, tighten them up, stand behind us at the UN, and begin to cut off even more of that energy and currency supply and that black market economy. Do everything you can, denuclearize that peninsula.
That's the message from Rebecca Grant. And yes, they have been, at least when it comes to the Korean issue, they have been standing with us at the Security Council, which sometimes has been surprising. So we'll see how that goes. Rebecca, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course.